Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fish Tank. My name's BadAsFish80 and today we have another Minion Masters update video. So tomorrow, which is going to be Thursday the 25th of November, Minion Masters version 1.30 will be dropping. We've got access here in the Fish Tank to the patch notes. We're going to look at the new cards, the new skins, plural, as well as the balance changes. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this video. Please, if you do, hit that subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment. But without any further ado, let's dive in to what we're going to be finding out in Minion Masters 1.30. So we're still in the Malediction expansion. Now, 1.30, we're going to have two new cards as normal. We're going to have two new legendary skins, and we'll talk about those a little bit more in a moment. We're going to have some balance changes, bug fixes, and all adventures are now accessible for free. That's exciting if you enjoy the PvE, player versus environment part of Minion Masters. Now let's look at the new cards that we're going to see here. Okay, the first card we have is Bounceberry Flingers. So this is a new monkey card. Let's have a look at it in a little bit more detail. So this is going to be a Zenshi ranged minion. It's a 4 mana card. We've got 3 keywords to look in here, so you get 2 of them. They have 90 HP, they do 40 damage every 2 seconds for 20 DPS, and you can only use 1. There is copies allowed 1, but if you look closer you will see it has the Myriad keyword. Now the Myriad keyword was introduced with the Sapphire Pebbles card, and the way the Myriad works is that when you draw this, that means when it enters into your hand, you get X additional copies sprinkled throughout your deck. In this case it's Myriad 2, so you get 2 additional copies of this in your deck. Now, as well as getting those extra copies, there is a bonus if you spawn this card when you have another one of the copies in your hand. So as you see there, it says gain giant growth if you have another copy of the Bounceberry Flingers in your hand. So similar to the way that the Sapphire Pebbles worked, where if you had multiple ones you would get a mana reduction. This time they don't all spawn at once, but they spawn with a buff if you have another one in your hand. So they throw the bounce berries, which means their attack bounces to another target in range for 50% of the damage. And of course, giant growth, you'll see here, and this is one of the balance changes we'll see a bit later, is an extra 30% damage and an extra 30% health. Okay, so that's card number 1, the Bounceberry Flingers, a 4 mana Zenshi ranged minion. Card number 2, Harmful Souls. Let's look at this in a bit more detail. So this is an accursed spell, 5 mana. Let's read a little bit about it. So 5 souls infest an area, absorbing into enemies, dealing 100 damage. So that's 100 damage per soul. So that's 500 total damage. Now it has a buff from Accursed Ascension, which is you get an additional soul. So that's 6 souls, 600 total damage. And if any of the souls survive, then that will give you 1 progress towards your Accursed Ascension. You see there it says for every soul left at the end of the duration. The duration is 3 seconds. And again, of course, Accursed Ascension is when you've spent 80 mana or used any other cheeky mechanics to get to your 80 counter for your Accursed. So things like kills from the Haunting Hugger will count, kills from Near Slumbers, etc. Okay, so those are the 2 new cards. And then we're going to look at the 2 new skins. So, believe it or not, on the 2nd of December, Minion Masters is turning 5 years old. Can you believe it? 2016, the 2nd of December it came out. And to celebrate, there's going to be a birthday King Puff skin. The Cakin Puff. And that's going to be free in the free Battle Pass. So everybody can get that. And it's only on level 6 in the Battle Pass. So it's super easy to get hold of. And the second skin, which is just a regular Battle Pass skin in the Premium Battle Pass, is the yellow Scratsu. And to me, this looks pretty awesome. Okay, so we've seen 2 new cards, 2 new skins. Now let's go into the next section, which are the balance changes. So the balance changes are going to be split into buffs, adjustments, and nerfs. And the first thing we're going to look at are the buffs. Okay, so King Puff. Remember, King Puff's birthday cooldown used to be 40 seconds, then it got nerfed to 50 seconds, now it's been buffed back to 45 seconds. That means that your birthday comes around more often, getting your bridge switch and your on-field buffs. That was just because the nerf from 40 to 50 seconds seemed to be too harsh, so part of that has been reduced. Okay, Dragon's Nest. Now, the Dragon's Nest, a simple buff, mana cost down from 5 to 4. And now this is something we saw a little bit earlier, the Growth Burst Shrooms. So these can be picked up by Zenshi minions, and they will give additional attack damage and health. Used to be 25%, now it's up to 30%. On a small minion, not such a big deal. On a big minion, that can be a huge difference. Now, Scrat Tunnels. Scrat Tunnels simply have had the Impatient mechanic removed. The Impatient mechanic was not one that I was particularly fond of, especially when used in a way that you didn't get any bonus if you spawned it impatiently. So impatiently means it spawns itself if you've been holding on to the mana for a while. So Scrat Tunnels, no longer impatient. The same with Chisma Boomstick. So these are just little buffs. They're not annoying now. You don't have to worry about them playing themselves when you don't want them to play. Now, one of the relatively newer cards, the Kernaf Crystalback, the health is going to be buffed a little bit from 350 to 400. Just wasn't seeing enough play at its current stats, so hopefully a bit of extra HP will help that. Now, the Rabid Prowler, the devs wanted to simplify this a little bit, so they've removed Cool Slitherbound from it, and the sacrifice now only requires one Slitherbound to be consumed instead of 2. Remember, the Rabid Prowler, if you do activate the sacrifice, it becomes incredibly powerful with Berserker Rage. Okay, the next card that's going to receive a buff is the Crystal Sentry. Now, the Crystal Sentry, the health is going to go up from 275 up to 300. Next, we have High Inquisitor Ardera. Now, remember, when she attacks, she burns her health. Now, the rate at which she burns her health is going to be reduced. It was 6% per second, now it's down to 4% per second, so she'll be able to last longer. Again, just a buff for a card that wasn't seeing too much play. Now we have a slight buff for the Void Altar. The health is going to be increased, the building health from 500 to 550. That means it can take more damage before it dies. That means it's going to last longer. So just again, just a little bit of a buff for a card that doesn't see too much play. Now we see a little buff for the Bannerman. The target shielded for the Bannerman. So it was 5, going to go up to 7. Again, just a little buff there. Now we have a bit of love for Propeller Scrats. So this is going to be whether you get them in the Propeller Scrats card or the Propeller Horde. They're going to have a slight attack speed cooldown buff, which means their attack speed cooldown is less, so they attack more often, higher DPS. And we're going to see here Suggerlight Shield. Now, Suggerlight Shield got really impacted when they changed Master Damage to be both true damage and special damage, because the Suggerlight Shield no longer protected against the Master Damage. So with that in mind, the Suggerlight Shield has removed Mana Freeze. So instead of being 1 mana plus 1 mana freeze, effectively a 2 mana cost, it's now only a 1 mana cost card. But the the duration is going to be reduced a little bit from 5 seconds to 4 seconds. And then going on to the next section, that's the end of the buffs. Now we're into the adjustments. So the first adjustment is all masters are going to no longer have true damage. Now remember, they were in the last patch, all masters gained true damage. We weren't really sure particularly why. There were a few certain things that it was designed to counter, things like the Wild Stonebjorn with the thick hide, tanking masters for a very long period of time. But if you'll see, with this change and some future changes we'll talk about in a moment, you'll see that those issues have now been resolved. So true damage has been removed from masters. Masters no longer do true damage. Mordar, this doesn't affect you because you never had it in the first place. But as mentioned, master damage will still be special damage. It's not range damage. So the Sugarlight Shield will still not protect against it. The Incubus will still not jump towards masters. So there's a few little changes there and things that didn't change. One of the big changes to the masters not doing true damage is they will not kill barrel scrats. So we'll no longer have Stormbringer just killing screaming scrats with no explosions, things like that. Okay, now here we see a change for Mordor. Now the perks are the same, but they're going to be switched around. Perk 2 and Perk 3 are going to be switched around. So remember, currently Perk 2 is your second tombstone, and Perk 3 is the Vengeful Dead, where your units res with haste, which is 30% extra attack speed and movement speed. So now the Perk 2 is going to be resin with haste, and Perk 3 is going to be the additional tombstone. So normally what happens in Mordor, especially when you're playing against someone with a counter to the tombstone, when you're at Perk 1 it's really difficult, and then when you get to Perk 2 it's a lot easier because they struggle to counter both tombstones, whereas now that's not going to be the case until further into the match. And the devs still admitting that they're finding it difficult to get Mordor into a happy place. Again, we saw lots of Mordor decks previously with things like Fanriel and the Reconator, which are huge value reses, but they want to try to get away from Mordor having to be built around these specific cards and being more of a master that can be played with lots of different things. Okay, so that's a Mordor change, and here we see an adjustment. This is Lady and Frey simply having copies allowed reduced from 3 to 2. So we saw a lot of powerful decks, especially in pre-mades, or maybe just randoms as well, with 3 copies of Lady and Frey, which was very, very strong. So now you're only going to be able to have up to 2 copies of Lady and Frey. Now Gambler's Ball is being adjusted a little bit. So the sacrifice effect is being changed. So the way Gambler's Ball works is you get either a fireball or a healing fireball. And the previous sacrifice effect was that you were able to give yourself a better chance of getting both of them. Now, this has been changed. So you get either a fireball or a healing fireball. But if you sacrifice 3 Slitherbounds, you will cast the spell twice. And casting it twice means you'll either get 2 fireballs, 2 healing fireballs, or 1 of each. So that's a bit of a change to how the Gambler's Ball is going to work. Not a card we see too often, but the devs mention they want it to get back to the gambling aspects of the card. And they know it's not going to be particularly popular in the more competitive parts of the player base, but hopefully creating fun moments for the more casual and wacky players among us. Right, so we've done the buffs, we've done the adjustments, now we're going to look at the nerfs. Now, Plasma Marines. Plasma Marines, hugely meta card, very, very strong. They're going to receive a bit of a nerf here. So their damage is going to go down from 15 to 10, but their attack speed is going to be increased from 0.9 seconds to 0.7 seconds. So a little bit of a change there. The devs again say to focus more on their fast attack speed, hopefully making more space for other low-cost ranged units. So a bit of a nerf there for Plasma Marines. And Dragon's going to hate this one. Grenadier. Grenadier getting attack speed nerf. So 2 seconds up to 2.2 seconds. So overall DPS is going to be reduced. Again, a Grenadier incredibly strong for 2 mana. Incredibly meta card. Now we've seen a lot of Accursed decks recently. And there's going to be an overall nerf to skeletons. So these are the little skeletons. So the little skeletons you get from things like Skeleton Crew, Skeleton Horde, from the breath, as well as various other ways of getting them. So the damage is going to go down from 25 to 20. And now we see a nerf again for another cheap, powerful card, the Elite Swarmer. Health is going to be simply reduced from 250 to 225. And we've seen the change to the Marines, and one of the things we saw hugely popular were Marines being played with the Stint, because the Marines help generate the Outlander tech, and the Stint has its extra mechanic where it can grab a bridge by consuming some tech. Well, It can still do that, but it's going to cost you a little bit more tech. 50 tech up to 75 tech to activate the bridge grab ability. So you're going to be able to do that less often. And if you play the stint in a deck with other cards that consume tech, you're going to have to make more of a decision as to whether you want to be using that mechanic or using something else that's going to consume the tech instead. Now, we mentioned a little bit of a while ago with regards to the changes to the Masters and no longer doing true damage, and the reason that they did do true damage was to counter things like the Wild Stonebjorn. Well, that's been fixed in a different way. So Thick Hide, which is the way it reduces incoming damage, no longer protects against Masters or buildings, which means it only protects against spells and minions. So there we have it. We have 2 new cards, 2 new skins, and a birthday skin easy to get hold of in the free battle pass. We've seen some buffs, some adjustments, and some nerfs. And, of course, as always, the patch will come with bug fixes. So we saw with one of the new cards, the Sapphire Pebble, if you had 4 of them, when you spawned them, it looked like you only got 3, but there was actually 4, 2 of them were overlapping. That's been fixed. The Wrecked Walker no longer requires tech. If it costs 0 mana. There was also sometimes tech was not being generated when Morelia's Book of the Dead was being activated. That's been fixed. Dab emote now no longer in low res. Sorry. There's a tooltip issue with Kurnath, and they fixed an issue with being stuck in the loading screen for adventures with Caliph. So some good bug fixes there. Now, hold on. They don't mention Hypnotize in the bug fixes. Now, if you're not familiar, and I'm sure you are, now, recently Hypnotize has been bugged, whether that's Hypnotize from Coax or from the Hypnotize card. The units being hypnotized can sometimes attack double speed, which is insane. But they don't mention it here in the bug fixes, which is fairly concerning. But don't worry, Fishy's been on the case. I spoke to the developers, and this has been fixed. So let's check that tomorrow for ourselves when patch 1.3 for Minion Masters drops. And hopefully all things Hypnotize will be happy, and that means we can unban Hypnotize from our tournaments and people can get back to using those. Right, so if you've got any questions, if you've got any comments, if you've got any feedback, please reach out to me. The comments, as always, will be available on the video, so go down there and let me know what you think of the cards, the skins, of the balance changes. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up. I'm Bad as the Fish 80, and I'll see you again soon here in the fish tank.